Good morning. Welcome to Globe Summit. We are spending the next 2 days taking the Boston Globe's award-winning journalism beyond the page. My name is Shirley Leung, and I'm a business columnist and host of the Globe's Say More podcast. A new episode drops every Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're tuning in, you probably want to know more about what Celtics star Jaylen Brown has been up to during the offseason. Well, he's been trying to close the racial wealth gap by building what he once described as a Black Wall Street in Boston. So Jaylen was hoping to be with us this morning, but the Celtics preseason started just yesterday, and I think you saw the big news. He shaved his beard. So during the offseason, Jason actually worked on something and launched his big idea, and he's calling it Boston XChange. And the idea is to create $5 billion in generational wealth for communities of color in Boston. And we're going to hear from the three leaders who he's been working with to make this concept a reality. So joining us virtually from Washington, D.C. is Kim Tignor. I think Kim's on our screen, and she's a lawyer by training, and Kim is the executive director of Take Creative Control. Her work focuses on ensuring equitable access to intellectual property rights and resources for communities of color. And here on stage with me are Malia Lazu. Hi, Malia.
Hello.
She's the CEO and founder of the Urban Labs, a diversity strategy consultancy. She's also a lecturer at MIT's Sloan School of Business. Previously, Malia, and this is how I got to know you, was the regional president and chief culture officer at Berkshire Bank. Malia was hired by Kim and Jaylen to conduct community listening sessions to help Boston XChange take shape. And then we also have Yscaira Jimenez. She's a serial entrepreneur, lecturer at MIT, and entrepreneur in residence at MIT DesignX. Yscaira designed Boston XChange Accelerator Program. You're going to hear more about it. It's for entrepreneurs of color in the creative economy space in Boston. These are folks in design, arts, media, entertainment, fashion, and culinary arts. So I'm going to throw the first question to Kim, who's joining us from DC. So Kim, how did you get involved with Jaylen's Boston XChange initiative?
Good morning. I am just so sad not to be on stage. Those are some incredible ladies that are over there in Boston together. I'm so sad that I'm not with you guys.
We miss you.
Yeah. But so, I think that the best place to start is July 26th. A little over a year ago, 2023, when Jaylen signed that historic contract with the Celtics. And I think that what was incredible about that moment, when asked, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with all of this, right? And his response was very boldly, very simply, I want to help build a Black Wall Street in Boston. I think that he'd been reading a lot about the race disparities in the city and nationally, and really wanted to be thoughtful about the way that he wanted to contribute to the incredible work that's already happening in the city. And to that end, that is really how we came to be in contact with the folks that are on the stage right now, right? I remember after his announcement came out, Shirley, I'm 99.9% sure it was an article written by you, but there was an article to it, and we started doing an audit of the folks that were quoted and noted. And I remember reading the background of Miss Lazu up there on that stage, and I was like, that's the woman that we need to reach out to. And help us really think about the most productive way to support and have impact in the city of Boston. So it's been a great ride ever since.
It is true. I did write an article last year after Jaylen Brown made headlines, really almost global headlines, when he was saying that he was going to try to, create a Black Wall Street in Boston. And Malia, Miss Lazu was indeed quoted in my piece. So Malia, you've been conducting listening sessions in the community about Boston XChange, but before you tell us about those listening sessions, why the name change from Black Wall Street to Boston XChange? Why did you drop that name?
Well, I think Boston XChange is the name, and Black Wall Street was really the placeholder, right, that we were using, talking about that we want to create a Black economy, right? We want to create an economy that works, that centers, that is responsive to, made by, and for Black people. And so the idea of Black Wall Street, is this idea, there was 36 of them, 40, plus of them throughout the country, and they were all burnt down. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's an example of how every generation Black families have to rebuild their wealth, which leads to this racial wealth gap. And so, I think Black Wall Street, we should see it as, an introduction to the conversation. But what we're really talking about is, what does it mean for Black people to participate in a non-segregated economy? Mm-hmm. Because Black Wall Street worked when Black people couldn't shop at white places, right? So one of the questions the three of us are asking ourselves is, what does the Black economy look like in a desegregated, mainstream economy, which is really Jaylen's goal, right? It isn't just to create a Black Main Street in Roxbury, but it's to help Black people create wealth.
Mm-hmm. So I have more questions for all of you, but I just want to tell the audience that I want you to ask questions too. So I think there's a place where you can send in questions and we'll toss them in. I'm sure we'll have time to do that. So Malia, tell us more about these listening sessions. How did you conduct them? When did you conduct them? What did you learn? And what are you going to do with that information?
So discovery groups are something that we do for a lot of our clients when they want to build strategy. And the reason why is because many clients actually don't know what the communities want, right? I like to quote Henry Ford and say, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. A lot of times people don't actually know how to support Black people, support an economy. And the Black and Brown community in Boston, we identified over $150 million, right, going through to support Black entrepreneurs. That's who we want to hear from, right? We don't need to, Yscaira and I don't need to figure out what Black Wall Street needs in Boston. We need to hear from Black and Brown businesses. And so that's what the discovery groups allowed us to do. But it also allowed Kim and Yscaira and the team to meet the vibrant, amazing folks who are holding the Black economy down right now. The folks that Jaylen is going to be supporting, the folks who need to be successful in order for Jaylen's mission. So we did these listening sessions, talked to over 30 people, and we asked them questions like, how does Jaylen do this without cannibalizing what already is, right? We wanted to have honest conversations because right now everyone wants to, figure out how to get involved with a Celtic, but there are Black and Brown people in Boston who have been asking to build a Black Wall Street for years, right? So we wanted to make sure that Jaylen had strong ties with the community so that he could authentically and relevantly put up a plan.
So Kim and Yscaira, when you have seen some of the what's coming out of the listening sessions and these discovery groups, anything jump out at you that's surprising or just made you stop and reflect on it?
Yeah, I think you hear from a lot of folks who have been doing this work on the ground, who have already been supporting the entrepreneurs that we're looking to build on that support. And their hopes and aspirations are around the direct needs of some of these entrepreneurs. So for example, we'll talk about this in a bit. What did we see with the accelerator and the application pool? There's a thriving ecosystem of retail entrepreneurs here, fashion, you name it. And there isn't a manufacturing hub really here. And so
right, that was brought up in the discovery.
That was brought up in the discovery.
Really?
And so
it's a huge problem for Tanisha. Yeah.
So for folks to get, their first line produced to get to the market, they have to do it outside of Boston. And so one of the ideas is, could this be a catalyst for creating a manufacturing sector here in Boston? Wow. And we're like, we wouldn't have learned that had we not talked to, supporting people who support entrepreneurs, basically. So,
and Kim, you're based. Oh, go ahead, Kim. I was going to say you're based in DC. You must, and you've come up here, and what did you learn about us, our kind of the Boston economy here?
So I just have to tell you guys, one of the things, it's been a complete joy, to be honest with you. I've been blown away by the infrastructure that surrounds the startup economy. I would say that is comparable to what I've seen happening in Silicon Valley. However, Boston, there's a bit more texture to it. It's more diverse. It seems like it's still there's this intention to center around a more diverse body of startups. And I don't want to pretend that anyone is getting it perfectly, but I have to tell you, I've been blown away, and talk about it a lot, even when I'm here in DC, because I do not understand why we cannot try to get, we need to start ramping up and learning from you guys. But it really has been a joy to learn about not only the way that, not just about the work that a lot of the leaders are doing in terms of thinking about creating a more equitable economy, but also just innovative ways to partner with cities and all of the thought leadership and institutions that are already there. So it's really been a joy to think about this, not only as a way to really partner with the city, for us to partner with the pre-existing work in the community, but then also like, how do we build this to scale? How do we take this from city to city to city? Because I really have come out of this, understanding that, we have a lot to learn from Boston.
Oh, we love to hear that. So, Yscaira, so the first piece of Boston XChange is this accelerator program, and giving grants of up to $100,000 to 10 entrepreneurs in Greater Boston. And you designed this program, and you've been reviewing the applications. So, tell us about what you're seeing. How many did you get? What are the kinds of startups that have come through?
Sure. First, I do want to say I co-created this, so I shouldn't, this credit doesn't fall on my lap. And I want to give a huge shout out to Renee, who works very closely with Drew and Lauren Holiday. Right. And so part of the design process is like, where do we join forces? Where do we not reinvent the wheel? Who is already doing amazing things? And how can we learn and build on that? And so, Renee, with Drew and Lauren's support, came to us and say, should we join forces? We've been doing this in a couple of other cities. We've learned a thing or two about funding Black founders. And so we're like, absolutely.
This is Drew Holiday, his Celtics teammate, right?
So they're not only, partnering and winning championships on the court, they're doing it off the court as well. And Lauren also is an Olympian. Yes. And so all three of them. And so really starting there, Kim and I also spent some time doing discovery with creators before, I'm an entrepreneur. And so I have some lived experience here in Boston. I know how hard it is to try and break through and, get people to fund you. But, we really wanted to hear directly from folks. And so we held these listening sessions. And based on what came out of that and some of the programmatic partners that we invited to kind of help us think through this. So, shout out to MIT, shout out to Harvard, shout out to Suffolk, shout out to Roxbury Community College. We came up with this, with this concept of an accelerator. We did a 2-week window, and I know that feels short.
It felt really short.
People, but let me tell you, we had a gut feeling that we were going to get an overwhelming amount of interest, and that was right on. So over 1,000 people expressed interest, started applications to submit. Almost 500 of them submitted applications, so 462 to be exact. And we interviewed about 10% of all of the finalists. We were looking for a few criteria, folks who either we identified as creators and or they identified as creators. So folks who were contributing to the culture here in Boston and had the potential for some unique intellectual property. And so we were looking at that. We were looking at folks who already kind of gotten started. We know there are a lot of folks who are just getting started, who just had an idea. And so we thought, this is going to be a learning experience, this first cohort. And so we want to make sure we get it right. And so we have, about 18 of those folks made it to the finalists, and they're sitting with Drew and Jaylen and Lauren, who are going to select the 10 from there. And hopefully we'll hear really soon on who they are. But happy to tell you a little bit more about what we saw there too.
So I was going to say, what are the, oh, go ahead, Kim, sorry.
I just want to double click on a sentiment that Yscaira opened with, which is the idea of this partnership with Drew and Lauren Holiday and Jaylen Brown. And I think it's just signaling, and then in turn, right, with the brain trust that we even see on stage right here, if we're going to make systemic change, this is going to take collective investment. We'll have to move together. And I think that it's just, there's something fresh about this moment. I think it's really, really important to see, Drew and Lauren Holiday and Jaylen, how they want to stand together. They want to create a long-term strategy. They are signaling, right, just by the relationships that are being forged right now, and we're seeing on stage, this is a long-term strategy, and this is about systemic change, and it's going to take us moving collectively to see that through.
Yeah, I remember when I interviewed Jaylen, I guess last month, on the eve of the launch of Boston XChange, he talked about how he wanted this to be part of his legacy in Boston, not just, the championship rings, but really creating generational wealth for communities of color. So I think that's really a noble goal. And Yscaira, before we move on, I want to know, tell me a little bit, just give us a little hint of the kinds of startups you saw. And because, as I've written in my article, there are a lot of accelerators in Boston, but I don't think any of them really focus in on the creative economy.
Not since Future Boston Alliance.
Has
been great to see. I feel like I'm seeing the 2.0 of this. And Yscaira and I have known each other since before this. And so she's one of the trusted faces at MIT that I have.
Thank you for that, Malia. So I have to say we were blown away by the brilliance, the range of creatorship, if that's a word. And so I'll just give you a few examples. So we saw, like I mentioned earlier, a lot, Jaylen was right. There is a big creator economy here. And so, traditionally speaking, a lot of fashion designers, a lot of folks, with brands creating new aesthetics. And so we expected to see some of that. Folks who are building sustainability and like sports brands, folks who are creating, I'm going to call it like the Zumba for Black and brown people. We, one of our applicants was like the first Black, master chess championship in Massachusetts. A lot of food brands too. These were some of my favorite folks who are looking at ancestral foods. So, cassava and like things you don't find in your baby food that you want to feed your kids. And you have to, and so it was just so refreshing. I call this one person the Haitian Rachel Ray, like creating these like culinary masterpieces. And so really like across the gamut, also we saw collectives of artists in the film industry, in Dorchester and other places. So groups of artists kind of coming together. Tech was also represented. And so folks using AI to support the creators, to build their audiences. I can go on, but so many amazing folks across multiple industries.
I mean, that's great to hear because Boston tends to be known for like nerdy tech, the kind of tech.
Fun tech.
Right.
We have a lot of fun.
Well, and I think that really speaks to whose eyes are looking at Boston.
That's
right. So here a young talent phenom comes into the city and what he sees are a bunch of Black and brown creatives. When other people come in the city, what they see are a bunch of white tech bros or a bunch of finance bros, right? And so I think it's also important to remember that we might not be looking at this city with eyes that want to value a Black economy and that that might be why we missed so many things that
and
are
to
happening.
that point, to make that point data driven, the biggest neighborhood, we tracked zip codes, the biggest neighborhood that applied was Dorchester. Were we surprised? Of course not. We know that, Dorchester is teeming with creators and creativity.
That's right.
So Kim, so Jaylen is back to basketball. He is, working hard on Banner 19 as we speak. So what happens to Boston XChange now? I mean, what are the next phases?
Oh, wow. So the work continues, right? And I think what we're doing is we're continuing to build that brain trust, reach out, broaden that network of advisors, continue to learn from the community as much as possible. And to that end, that was one of the things why we launched the accelerator. As we've talked about before, we're looking for a headquarters for our Boston headquarters and still looking. But in the interim, we want to continue to learn from the community. We want to preview. We'll be rolling out some programming in 2025 that will preview what it feels like and what it will be once we have those headquarters. But we want to start rolling out that programming and starting to support the community immediately and start to learn from the community and our partners as well.
And I think you also want to hire an executive director, right?
We do. Boston based, Boston grown. Yes. It's so important. We will be looking for an executive director.
And we don't have a job description right now, y'all. So like
Not yet.
You don't need to email us. Don't email Shirley. There is no job description yet. We will let you know when we're ready.
Yes. But we thought it was critically important, again, signaling that this is really about a long-term strategy to effectuate change in the city of Boston. So we thought it was critically important to, start to really bring in those roots and bring about that long-term strategy.
I mean, we touched on this earlier, that there are many nonprofits working with the Black and Brown communities to close the racial wealth gap. I mean, they've been doing it for years, if not decades. So what can Boston XChange and Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday, what can they do differently? Like how do they use their platforms? I mean, it seems like people have been for so long trying to close this gap and they haven't been successful. So what could make this venture different this time?
So I want to recognize that the reason why the racial wealth gap hasn't been able to close is not because of the attempts of Black people, but because of the exploitation of white-centered structures, right? So let's be clear, it's because of banking. It's because of how mortgages are given, right? It's because of those things. Black people don't, if we had that power, we'd be getting mortgages, right? And I think that's really what we're hoping to see, is that whenever you see a celebrity come into a movement, and everyone knows my old story, right? I mean, I worked with Harry and got to learn this really firsthand through seeing the civil rights lessons that he learned.
Harry Belafonte.
Yeah. But celebrity makes people want to be a part, right? People like proximity to celebrity. And so I think Jaylen is going to be able to attract more people who like power, like celebrity, like institution, and hopefully can then shake out new monies, right? A lot of what Kim and Yscaira and I were talking about is that all these people that they are the foundation that will allow Jaylen to be successful, right? Because the reason why we don't have Black Wall Street is not because Jaylen hasn't done it, right? Like, let's be clear. But Jaylen can provide a type of celebrity, right? And an attraction to leverage that personality trait in a lot of people. And that's really what we hope. I also want to be clear that Jaylen and all of these folks can't build a Black Wall Street with the current exploitation practices we have in the city. So I think that's what we need to think about our banking. We need to think about how we actually stop exploiting people. But Jaylen's calling attention to it in a way that, a lot of the folks who have been holding it down wish that there could be a Globe Summit on it before Jaylen said it, right? But we needed Jaylen to say it to get this going.
Yeah. And I'd say, the class that I teach at MIT is on systems change. And so you think about the roles of different people in systems change, right? And you have an innovator, you have a catalyst, you have an agitator, you have a facilitator. And so I see Jaylen, Drew, and Lauren being those catalysts, those facilitators to kind of bring coalitions together to do all of the things that Malia is saying. So excited and looking forward to all the work they're going to do.
Okay, so we have 30 seconds left. One last question, and then we got to go. So what could this audience, tuning in online, what can they do to support the Black economy and create generational wealth for communities of color? I know it's so I'm sorry, lightning round. What can they do? Kim, start us off.
I would say, listen, you're about to hear an announcement about an incredible cohort of startups that are going to be based in Boston from our accelerator program. And I think that there's on us, it's the concept of community care and really engaging and supporting. And what does it look like if we all collectively ensure that our local businesses, our creators are supported? So engage with them, wrap around them, lift them up, bring them in. And so that would be the one incredible way to partner.
Okay, we've run out of time. I'm sorry. I didn't.
No, ladies,
That's a great.
And see their value.
Right,
See
and
the
that is a
value of
great
Black
final
economy.
answer. So I love that. So thank you, Kim, Malia, Yscaira, for your insights and being part of Globe Summit. It's always good chatting with you. For those of you online, don't go away. Globe Summit is just getting underway with more sessions under this year's theme, Boston's Breakthroughs. Next up is Globe's Ideas editor, Brian Bernstein. He is hosting the Investing in Climate Innovation panel. Check out the full schedule at globe.com/summit.